Welcome, everyone, to the Birds Nest Podcast. I'm Joe Donahue. Thank you so much for joining us today. Well, 10 practices are in the books, and the Eagles are now starting to pivot to take on the preseason. They're heading down to Baltimore as we tape this tomorrow for the first preseason game on Saturday. And joining us today to talk about the Eagles training camp and the Eagles preseason just before he heads down to Baltimore himself is CBSSports.com writer Jeff Kerr. Jeff, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, Joe, always a pleasure. This is the best time of year for me. As much as I loathe the preseason, I enjoy watching the preseason. I enjoy the battles. For some reason, I had on two TVs last night. I was watching the Phillies, and I had on Texans Patriots, and I'm like, why do I got this football game on? But I just couldn't look away. CJ Stroud, Malik Cunningham, all those guys. I'm so intrigued by those fourth quarter roster battles for every single team. And one of the best parts about my job is I get to write overreactions for every game, every week. And fans just eat them up. Like whether I'm right or wrong, it's kind of fun conversation to start. Like, oh, should this guy make the team? Is this guy's roster spot in jeopardy? And I get to do this every week of the regular season. It's honestly my favorite part of the job.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is definitely sort of the time where all kinds of speculation gets to run rampant, and it's definitely a ton of fun especially in these early days when we're just starting to get to know the team that's going to be put together and be on the field during the regular season in a very low key environment. It's certainly with the intensity of, okay, let's get ready for camp and let's get ready for the regular season and let's get ready for the upcoming year and be ready to get our nose to the grindstone when the regular season games start. So that's great and that's important. But it also seems like this Eagles team seems to just be a really fun team to be around. And I think that we've noticed that certainly a little bit in other Philly sports too. The Phillies are a notable example of that. But I remember I was watching Avonte Maddox's press conference towards the beginning of camp, and he was just constantly getting interrupted by players in camp saying, hey, they were joking around. It was great. Yesterday or earlier this week, Darius Slay crashed offensive coordinator Brian Johnson's press conference to make a pitch for him to be wide receiver. That was an interesting moment there. And this seems to be a translation of one of Coach's core values of connecting. How do you see this sort of fun aspect of the team translating to on the field performance? I know we haven't seen them play on the game yet, but how do you see that making an impact?
Well, this team is a likable team. And for example, at one of the practices I was at, Kenny Gainwell was about to speak to the media, and he just happened to be standing behind me. And, before he was going up, he's eating Rita's water ice because they give away Rita's water ice to the players and to the fans and everybody after practice. And I looked at him like, Swedish fish, really? Like, you're not a green apple guy? And he goes, I've had that all week. And, we started laughing about it. I'm like, well, then go with mango or something. Wasn't mango on the list? He's like, I want mango. And, just a fun exchange before he actually goes up there. And then, oh, by the way, you get to ask him the first question, which is even better. I'm like, I probably wasted it. Ask him why he's eating Swedish fish water ice. But regardless, this team knows when it's time to go to work, when it's time to. They mix business with pleasure really well, and they like to have fun, but they also know what the end game is here. And like AJ Brown said, I don't have to tell you what the goal for this team is. I'm pretty sure we all know what it is. It's Super Bowl, and it's just an amazing amount of talent on this roster. Is it as good as it was last year? I don't know. I think it's tough to beat last year's team, but if you got guys like the rookies, like Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith, Sidney Brown, Tyler Steen, if they can provide that impact for them, and I'm not saying they all have to immediately play and contribute, but they can provide the depth that they had last year, I think this team is really good. But overall, though, as long as you got Jalen Hurts on this team, as long as you got A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith healthy, this team's going to be fine.
Great. Yeah, Jalen Hurts certainly being a huge part of the team. I don't think anybody really expected the kind of leap that he took last year from 2021 to what he put forward in 2022. One of the things that we hear Coach Sirianni talk about every time that he comes up at his press conference and he's asked about Jalen, he always seems to talk about Jalen's consistency. How have you seen that playing out? How have you seen that play out during training camp?
So I thought Jalen's been having a better training camp this year than he has last year. Now, I have to admit, last year I watched Jalen Hurts a lot more than I did this year. This year I've been watching a bunch of other things. I can't. It's hard to keep track of 90 players, so you pick your battles. But I'm not the quarterback stats guy or anything like that. I don't believe in stats for a practice. But I've been seeing a crisper Jalen Hurts, a guy who's more confident in his ability to get the ball to his receivers. He puts the ball where only his receivers can catch it. He hasn't made that many mistakes. Of the practices I've been to, I haven't seen him throw an interception. I know he has, but from other practice reports I'm getting from some of the guys on the beat. But overall, I like his delivery. I like his footwork. I think his confidence is through the roof. He knows he could play at a high level in this league. He's definitely getting the ball out quicker. He's more cerebral than he was last year. Last year was like, okay, like Jalen Hurts is going to be good, but how good is he going to be? Well, he turned out he was runner-up for MVP. This year, I feel like it's what he did last year, plus he's smarter. He's a better decision maker. I've noticed this with a lot of these guys. Like Justin Herbert's one of them. I always thought he's beginning to be a better decision maker. Josh Allen didn't show it last year, but he's a really good decision maker too. Patrick Mahomes, obviously, we know what he can do. It's Joe Burrow's another one. Like those five are probably the five you look at and you're like, okay, these are the elite quarterbacks in this league. How does one separate themselves from the other? And I think Jalen might be going to it's Patrick Mahomes, then it's Jalen Hurts and Joe Burrow. So I think that's where Jalen is trying to take that step to this year. If not where Mahomes is. The Eagles win the Super Bowl, you have more than every right to argue Jalen Hurts should be the number one player in the league.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I know even with him being number 3 on the top 100, I know they were saying earlier in the week, nobody really cares about that because you got to get to work and you can't let that be a distraction. But I mean, the only 2 people who beat Jalen Hurts out in the NFL's top 100 were Patrick Mahomes and Justin Jefferson. So certainly Jalen being number 2 quarterback in the league, number 1 in the NFC, doesn't really surprise us as Eagles fans, doesn't really surprise us who follow the team really at all. So because I mean we saw that and he definitely earned that spot there. Another big thing that's occurred and another big thing of intrigue, especially for folks, is we've got 2 new coordinators. We've got Brian Johnson taking over as offensive coordinator. We've got Sean Desai coming in as the defensive coordinator. These are new guys. They've got their own takes on how we do certain schemes. And certainly Brian was around last year and Nick Sirianni was saying he was part of the conversations that they were having in the offensive room in the offense or among the coaching staff there with Shane Steichen. Now we've got somebody new, certainly from a similar school, but somebody new on the defensive side, sort of running the show. How do the guys seem to be adapting to those new coordinators?
I think you're not going to see much of a change with Johnson in terms of what they're doing, in terms of what Shane Steichen did, but you do have better pass catching backs now. No disrespect to Miles Sanders, that just wasn't his game. DeAndre Swift, that's basically what he does. He's one of the best receiving backs in the NFL. Kenny Gainwell is a very underrated receiving back. So I think you're going to see that wrinkle in the offense. I think you're going to see a little tweaks on offense, but you're not going to see anything significantly different, which is fine because the Eagles had one of the best offenses in football last year with Shane Steichen. Now, I hate to upset Eagles fans here, but Sean Desai ain't no different than Jonathan Gannon. They're just going to be a little more physical. I think they're going to have a tougher approach, but in today's NFL, you get pressure based off your 4 pass rushers. You don't send extra guys. That's where cover 0 comes in, and that's where you get beat over the top every single time. Jonathan Gannon believed in not giving up a big play. So Patrick Mahomes dunked his way to victory last year. Well, that's what's going to happen this year, with Sean Desai. They don't have, even if they did have the personnel like they did last year, it doesn't matter. It's don't give up the big play. Don't give up the 20, 30-yard plays. And that's what you're going to see with Desai this year. But you're going to see a bit of you're going to see a bit of tweaks in the size defense. Like you're going to see him get more creative on certain blitz packages, but overall, the defense is pretty much going to be the same. It's going to be the front four guys get the pressure. You rotate guys like Nolan Smith, Brandon Graham, Josh Sweat, guys like that. With Hassan Reddick, and same with Jalen Carter. That's why Jalen Carter is going to play a big role in this defense this year. You're going. It's all about having fresh legs in the fourth quarter, and if you can do that, I think this defense can be a top 5 unit again. I will say this in terms of the NFC East. This is how good defenses are in the NFC East. The Eagles might be the third best defense, which is nothing to scoff at. When you got Washington, who I love their defense, I love their personnel. If Chase Young comes back like he should, they're going to be really good. Dallas's defense we know is really good. Even the Giants' defense is good. I mean, that's why the NFC East is a really good division because of their defenses. But there's no shame in the Eagles having a top 5, top 10 defense. I mean, the third best defense in their division.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, we were really good defense last year, and I mean the speculation has only been that we were only going to get better, especially with after the first round of the draft that we had. Certainly with Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith. How have those guys been gelling? I know Jalen had one tweet that I remember. I forget who tweeted it out, but one tweet that I remember was Jalen Carter had a pretty big education going up, like right up against Lane Johnson and then Jordan Mailata right in a row and one-on-ones, and didn't get any kind of penetration from them. How have those guys been worked into the mix?
So Nolan Smith's getting a lot more first team reps throughout camp because Sonrak's been out. So Nolan Smith's been getting those looks with Brandon Graham. He's been relieving Brandon Graham, but Smith has been playing the off-ball linebacker. He's been playing the edge. They're mixing him in. Nolan Smith is going to be a part of this rotation. Same with Jalen Carter. They're starting to get Carter in now with the first team a bit. It's getting the rookies acclimated, and you're going to see a lot of them this preseason. They're going to get a lot of snaps, or you're going to see them make an impact. I think they are both going to be impactful players this year. I'm not worried about any of them. As good as you're not hearing much about Carter in camp, but you're going to hear a lot about him in the regular season. Same with Nolan Smith. But you are hearing a lot about Nolan Smith in camp. I will say of the rookies, don't expect Sidney Brown to start week 1. I just don't think he's going to be ready for that. Personally, I think he knows one speed, and that's kill, pretty much. Like he goes 100 miles per hour, which is awesome. But sometimes you gotta not have your foot on the gas pedal all the time. Let's just put it that way. And I think the preseason is going to be a very intriguing time for Sidney Brown. Not saying he can't get that starting job. If you ask me through 10 training camp practices how Sidney Brown's going to be, I don't think he's going to be a starter come week 1.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's I guess that might kind of at least unofficially be reinforced by the depth chart that was pushed out.
I wouldn't put too much stock into that depth chart.
I wouldn't put too much stock into it. Yeah, it's the first one that came out. It's there's a lot of oars. There's 5 running backs listed as RB1. So they're just trying right now to sort of mask some of what they're trying to do.
Did you get a laugh at some of the responses on Twitter? Like people were like, "How is DeAndre Swift the 5th running back?" I'm like, "He's not the 5th running back. If you look, it's alphabetical order and everything's in order." I've heard a couple stories about NFL teams and how they make their depth chart, their depth charts. It's literally like one of the lowest guys on the totem pole, and they just kind of make it for them, like because they have to put one out as mandated by the league. They could put Jeff Kerr at quarterback, and I'm not even on the roster. Well, I'm lying about that. I have to be on the roster, but it's funny like how a team could. You have to make it believable, right? Like Jalen Hurts is a starter. Like you can put 5 running backs on the depth chart, etc. But I always tell people, look, I tweet it out, but don't put too much stock into it. I always try to tell people that if you really want to look at the depth chart, just kind of go with what your beat reporters are writing about. Like it's similar to it, but it's not really. Like I think Brett Toth was the second team center, but really it's been Josh Andrews over the past week because Toth just hasn't been good. It's stuff like that, right? Like linebacker, like it is Nicholas Morrow, it is Christian Ellis right now, but Miles Jackson's been mixing in with the first team, and Zach Cunningham's going to get so it's hard to actually put a stamp on, as you mentioned earlier.
Yeah. And realistically, too, if something were to happen, like if Jason Kelce needs some time off, what they're really going to wind up doing for that second string center is they're going to move Cam Jurgens into that spot and put somebody else at right guard. They're not going to. They're not, to use the one example.
Yeah. Now in the regular season, I will say this: it might be Josh Andrews because I don't think they want to move. Jeff Stoutland believes don't
move guys.
Yeah. Don't move multiple guys. So it probably would be Josh Andrews, and they keep Cam Jurgens there. But yeah, you're right though. Like you saw on Sunday, you were at the live practice, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So you saw they put Jurgens at center. I just think they wanted to give him some reps there, like a cross train. Like I tell people, just because Tyler Steen is left tackle, yeah, he lost the right guard competition, but he's actually a really good left tackle. So it actually benefits them that they have a guy like that. Like Steen's had a good camp. He just didn't win the right guard job. That's not an indictment on him.
Yeah. And that happens. And I mean, that's one of the things I know. One of the things Howie was saying over the offseason is he likes to build from those lines out. So you might find that there's a lot of depth at the line positions, and then it kind of starts to thin out a little bit. We noticed that a little bit earlier this week, right before that live practice, that public practice on Sunday, when they dropped the signing of Miles Jack and Zach Cunningham as linebackers, and Sirianni was out there. I mean, he's not going to say anything different in terms of like, I like the guys in our room, but he kind of conceded the point that they were a little bit thin there. With Nakobe Dean being down, they had to mix Nolan Smith in there a little bit. What do you see guys like Cunningham and Jack as they're coming in, especially later in camp? How have they been adapting to the defense?
Well, if you asked me on Monday, I would have told you, and I probably could still say it, Zach Cunningham is more likely to start for this team than Miles Jack. But Miles Jack's been getting the first team reps. So what's that telling me right now? Miles Jack's in the mix and Zach Cunningham's not. Now, again, it's only been 3 practices. They've only been on the team 5 days. Things could change. But if you're asking me for an instant reaction, that's a reaction you're going to get, right? So they needed that badly. Like, they had Ben Van Summerlin playing Mike linebacker on Sunday. And I'm like, really? Like, he's going to be on the practice squad, but you can't do this. Like, you can't have what they have out there. And, it was literally Nicholas Marr, Ben Van Summerlin, Sean Bradley, and Christian Ellis. Like, you're just not going to survive with that, with Nakobe Dean out. So you needed to get depth. And they made the move. They got better in depth. There was more depth at off-ball linebacker than there is at safety right now. And, yeah, they could trade for a safety. I still think they're going to do that at some point. But with the linebackers, I think they're hoping to find a double hit here with Miles Jack and Zach Cunningham. And, right now, I feel like they could. I mean, Cunningham's a good player when he's healthy, but hasn't been healthy. And Jack, I think it was kind of shocking that he was still on the board in August, but that's how free agency goes. But I just wish people would stop getting excited over a name and look at performance, because we've seen this before with a lot of players here, and not just here, around the league. Like, Miles Jack he's a fine player. I think he could start for this team. I still think Zach Cunningham could start for this team, but they're better than what they have. But just don't be like, oh, Miles Jack, they're immediately going to be good. I'm like, no, they could be good, but there was a reason why it took them to August to sign.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the things too. Like, especially there's going to be one big cut day, and there's going to be 37 people who are no longer going to be part of the Eagles roster. And I remember there were people saying, don't overhype the waiver period, because if guys are being cut from teams, there's a reason why they're being cut from teams. And if guys are taking so long in the free agency period to be signed, there's a reason why they're taking so long to be signed during the free agency period, because there's something to the performance. It's not just grabbing the first guy that you can find off the shelf, so to speak.
Yeah, well, with the Eagles too, guys they cut might get claimed by other teams because they're such a deep roster. I mean, there's going to be positions where cornerback's going to be one of them. Like, you're going to cut a player, and other team's probably going to claim them. That's why you got to watch, like, the rookies you're keep it around. Like Mekhi Gardner, for example, he's having a great camp.
Hmm.
Well, what happens if he doesn't make the team? Then what?
Hmm.
Like he had a good training camp with the Eagles. They're going to say, okay, well, this guy's pretty good. We might want to put a claim on him, and that's what your team you worry about. So,
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes you just got to survive that 24-hour period. But again, we still got 3 more weeks for that.
Yeah. And guys also like Joseph Ngata, who he had a really great he had a really good performance when I saw him on Sunday.
He's had a good week.
He's had a good week. I have seen those reports coming out of camp there too. Um, Josh Jobe has been another one of those guys. Like, what happens if some of these guys don't wind up making? Kayvon
Oh,
Wallace earned his first team reps. Those
well,
are yeah,
I'll tell you right now, Job's going to be on this team.
yeah.
Nagata is still up in the air, but they keep six. He's the six right now. I mean, the issue is, do you keep on Elias Zacchaeus or Joseph Nagata? I think you keep both, but that means somewhere else you got to cut somebody.
Yeah.
So because you're not getting rid of Britton Covey because
Hmm.
that's your punt returner. So that's where it gets tricky. That's where it's hard to do a 53-man roster projection with this team.
Yeah. Yeah. Very, 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 very tricky there. I certainly I don't want to be the people who are I mean, we all dream it, but at the same time, we also kind of don't want to be the people with that kind of responsibility, because then what happens if we make the wrong decision and somebody else snaps it up? So
That's why they get paid what they get paid, and I get paid what I get paid.
There's a punter battle going on. We sometimes forget about the punter battle, but there is a punter battle going on, and Aaron Sipos and Ty Zentner, the stuff that I've been seeing come out of camp, even their performance, on Sunday when I was there, they kind of looked both about the same. And especially like when I'm looking at these stats, they seem to be mirror images. Am I wrong on that? Like, am I looking at like Ty Zentner and seeing a mirror of Aaron Sipos, or vice versa when I look
Yeah,
at Aaron?
I'll tell you what. I still say the punter on the Eagles roster come week one is not on this roster right now. I
Hmm.
don't think Sipas has done anything spectacular. I don't think Zentner's done anything spectacular. I haven't been a fan of either of them, to be honest. And
Yeah.
I mean, if they had to go with one of the guys on the roster, I think they go with Sipas because he's been there. But there's probably going to be a punter or two available. And I'm still shocked the Eagles didn't go after a veteran, but maybe they thought Zentner was going to be better than what he was. And again, this is why I kind of hate social media at times because, oh, they signed a punter. Yeah, yes, they signed an undrafted free agent punter. That's about what he is. And I don't try to overhype. Do you remember Murder Leg? You remember him?
I don't remember the nickname, but if you told me who it was, I'd probably remember who it is.
I think his name was Casey Stern. Like I think his nickname was Murder Leg, and he could boot a punt like 60 yards, but he wasn't good. Like he just wasn't a good punter. Like they drafted Jeremy Bloom once, and everybody was like, "Oh, Jeremy Bloom, that's the Olympic skier." I'm like, "Yeah, too bad Jeremy Bloom isn't good." So and they wasted a fifth-round pick on him.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why I try not to overhype too many people. I just kind of like to tell people the news. Like I don't tell people
Yeah.
what they want to hear. Like when I said my buddy Andrew DeCecco, we talk all the time, and he had tweeted out about Kenny Gainwell, and I said, you asked my honest opinion, who's been the best running back in camp? It's Kenny Gainwell, and Eagles fans are like, we're done, we're done. And I'm like, no, I'm just saying Kenny Gainwell's probably better than what you think he is. Like, it's nothing against DeAndre Swift, nothing against Rashad Penny. Rashad Penny ain't getting cut, anything like that. It's like you asked me an honest evaluation of performance, and that's what I'm giving you. It's like Marcus Mariota hasn't been as bad in camp as everybody's been saying either. I'm like, as
Mhm.
someone who watches offensive lines religiously, Brett Toth has been terrible.
Yeah.
And when you get those snaps, you're not going to have good throws. And it's funny how Mariota's been better since Josh Andrews has been taking over the second team reps at center.
Hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. We saw that on Sunday when I was there. Like Mariota was getting snaps that he had to like do acrobatics for sometimes to get. So it was, and that was something that coach acknowledged on Thursday when he had his last press conference before preseason officially starts tomorrow. He acknowledged that a bad snap is bad, so it impacts your ability to be a quarterback. So, yeah, so it's definitely seeing that, and you see that when you watch them and they practice. What do the Eagles need to focus on as they enter this preseason, as they go down to Baltimore tomorrow, as they come back to Philly for Cleveland and Indianapolis? What do they need to focus on?
Well, they're going to put a focus on the joint practices over the next 2 weeks. So you're going to hear a lot about the joint practices with Cleveland, about the one joint practice with Indy, I believe it is. I think they changed their schedule. I think they're going to practice in the afternoon next week, if I'm not mistaken.
I did see that. Yes, they're doing evening practices next week,
which is awesome for me. I'm a morning guy, but I kind of like practicing at night. But regardless, like the first preseason games, it is what it is, right? Yeah. You're going to see a lot of you might see the first team. I don't know, honestly, because the first preseason game is on the road. So do you want to play I don't think you're going to see Jalen play the practices where they have the joint practices. So if you're going to see Jalen, anybody on the first team, you might see him for a series or two on Saturday night, but I can't confirm nor deny that at this point. It's more just you're going to see a lot of the backups the first preseason game. Preseason games, they just don't play starters anymore.
Yeah, that is true. And certainly the focus on staying healthy, and with the guys who have been injured over the course of the week and the Eagles taking precautions towards keeping them on the sidelines, it's reasonable to not want them to be seeing live action. So, Jeff, where can we find you if we want to find out more about what you've got to share with us?
Okay, so you can find me, just search Jeff Kerr, on Google, CBSSports.com. Just search Jeff Kerr, CBS Sports. You can find all my work there. All my work's on CBSSports.com. I also go on CBS Sports HQ. Sometimes on Birds 365 on Jacob Sports, usually every Monday with Joe McDonald and John McMullen. And find me on Twitter, or X, I guess it is now, at Jeff Kerr CBS, Instagram at Jeff Kerr CBS. I have a Threads. I don't really use it, but it's the same thing. So, yeah, I mean, that's pretty much where you can find me and find all my work. It's, I'll be at the game tomorrow night. I'll be at all the preseason games, and I plan to be at both joint practices next week. So see how everything goes.
All right. Well, Jeff, thank you so much for joining us, and you have a safe trip down to Baltimore. And looking forward to hearing more from you when you get down there.
Yeah,
and thank you so much. Oh, thank you. And thank you so much to everybody for tuning into the Bird's Nest podcast. You can support the Bird's Nest podcast by liking this video and subscribing to Bird's Nest Media on YouTube and sharing to your social media pages. You can also find us on SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play Music, Amazon Podcasts, and Spotify. You can also visit birdsnestmedia.com to find the latest Eagles news. And if you feel so inclined to support more endeavors like this one, you can find the link to our Patreon either in the description below or at birdsnestmedia.com. Thank you so much for tuning in, and let's go Eagles.